us. Have any of you done anything with Micah or Darren?
Well, I've been with Darren like some of the times because it's because when we finish, usually I finish with Rikuti, and Rikuti finishes at like 5 minutes, and I switch to Darren because I try to have access to all the teachers.
Right. Good. Yeah. Well, John and I, of course, John, Darren, Michael, and I are old friends, so we go way back. There's a connection there. Darren and I are intimate friends. So Darren and I are as close as you'd want. Micah and I know each other from Princeton. We were together for a year at Princeton, so I know Micah. I don't know the other gentleman, and while I know John well, John and I are oil and water. You know. I guess I'll be careful here. I rate kind of authenticity as one of the highest things. So, I mean, if you're really a bad soul, then I don't have much time for you. But, uniqueness is a lot of fun. And I find that with John, we spend a lot of time covering ground that when you're a friend or intellectual intimates, it goes without saying. And so while I like John a great deal, I've known him for as long as you folks have been alive. We've never been intimate that way. Where Michael's a different story altogether. So Michael, it's a mix. We're very good friends, closest friends. Though Michael, more than Darren, has been a little bit more of a mentor to me, as well as a close friend. So pretty much everything that I do with Michael, other than Russian literature, probably American history, even though he's trained as an American historian, and maybe art history. Anything else we do, he's better than I. I mean, not better in a comparative way, just, he taught me to play chess. He taught me philosophy. He taught me just by doing it, just by engaging with each other. So that makes it a bit more of a mentor's relationship. And so as a friend, and just because I feel that he's had a great impact on my life, and because he didn't specify what the fudge we were going to do, I could say fuck. He just asked Darren and me. I didn't know about Micah or John or the other gentleman. He just asked Darren and me to do some of this, and I've been helping Michael try to revise his only manuscript. And I had some ideas around that, and I suggested that we turn it into a podcast, and where Darren would ask him, I don't live in the States, where Darren would ask him questions, which I wrote, and they'd have a dialogue with each other. Because that's the way we grew up. That was fun. That was dialogic relationship. And I don't think that's ever going to come off. And then Michael thought, well, he could do this, and he'd ask us to do it with him. And neither Darren nor I had any idea it would be 14 Monday mornings, 12 Monday mornings for me and 2 Sunday nights. So, but we've made it. But the larger reason, truly, Moshe, is if you guys show up, then why shouldn't I? Even if Joe Biden asked me to do it, or Satan.
Yeah.
If you guys show up, then I'm happy to talk to you. I feel that's just what you do.
Yeah, and can I say something? Like, I just listened to an interview with Fox with the guy from Dirty Jobs, and he said that one of the things that shocked him is that these days most people are quitting quietly, and means lack of work ethic. You do the bare minimum until you retire and move on. And like you said, yes, I think every person in that very limited group, we all show up with ourselves, mentally. We do the work we have, and then we share what we have. None of us are quitters, and thank you for coming.
Well, that's right. That's right. So it's just a group of us who happen to get together and chat. And again, I didn't pick these texts, and that frees me, so I don't have to explain to you folks what it all means. I don't have to, well, I can make sense of it. I try. Michael, I had a good fun with Michael. He doesn't know what he was doing with these. And so last week, I told him what I thought he was doing with them, and he thought it made more sense than anything he could think of. And he really liked, by the way, my Dickens throwaway line, Moses, which is what I feel, therefore I am.
Oh, yeah.
We decided that was a good tagline for romanticism. That'd be fine. So
yeah. So I believe that. So there's a question of in Dickens, we have kind of the solution to the problem of industrialization was return to nature, and then we asked Michael, you know, what does he see today? And I think your response was unplugging is kind of our. I don't know if solution is the correct word, but you know, a healthy response. Oh, and what Michael said is that he said that unplugging seems to be a way to, in a sense, return to nature, and so that there might not be much difference there. But he said he would defer to you because you know much more about this than he does.
he's lying. I told you what I know more about. If it's math, I know more. That's about it. All right, so you stumble upon works and reading them, and you're doing that, and it actually doesn't matter which works you're doing. You want to try to work yourselves at more and more challenging levels, right? So mere narrative is a level, identifying with a protagonist is a level, right? If you don't want Raskolnikov to confess, right? If you're begging him, don't do it, then, you know, maybe it's time to read the book a little bit differently, right? So I think all of these works for Michael are a way to, I think what, if you asked him, he might call it protreptic, an exhortation to have you folks work harder, however hard you're working, whatever you are, to work harder, to see, to actually think of what you're really doing. You're convening with not with him, and he's read more than anyone I've ever met. Anyone. Not with Darren, who is as logical as almost any human you'll ever meet. By the way, Michael's not. It's not about me at all. It's about chatting with Dostoevsky, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to understand him. What's he trying to tell you? What's he up to? And sometimes that's difficult because it's very ironic. Sometimes it's very difficult because it's hard. Sometimes it's difficult, like with Dostoevsky, because it's painful. Right? I trust you guys have suffered a little bit with this week. Right. So if that's, thank you for that. That's, at least you're not dissembling at all there. Moses, Paul, and Eduardo, if you're here and you can hear us, welcome. I don't think I've seen you before. How is, or seen would be the wrong term there. Hey there.
Hello. Hi.
Does that speak to you guys too? Can you, in some sense, relate? And what does that mean for you? Why do it? If it's an uncomfortable side, if it's not the best of Tana Korn, right? If that's not the best of him, then it wouldn't be the best of you either, surely. So why relate to it? Why do that? Why engage yourself in that way?
Well, there's a quote from Terence. The only thing I know about Terence is that he's a Roman poet, and this one quote, and that is everything. Oh shoot, it's my favorite quote. How did I forget it? It said, "I am human, and therefore nothing human is foreign to me." And so, yeah, I really take that to heart. And I think I mean, there is something human about Raskolnikov, and I guess all the characters here. So why? I mean, so
I think that's very good. I think that already is an answer, by the way. You can go on, but I think embedded in what you said, you can explain it, but I think that is a very, very sophisticated answer. Paul,
I think he's a cautionary tale. I think he's like a warning, like before we kind of slip into the pit of nihilism. It's like, hey, this is what's kind of waiting in there if we kind of fall in and are unable to claw ourselves back out.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'll go ahead, Paul. You can pass or play. You don't have to.
Yeah. Well, why read it? Well, first time to read it because other people have read it and I've said that it's a great book. But why study it? Well, because ever since Michael Moore won his Oscar for shooting at Columbine, we ask ourselves, more than before, it's like, why would you? I mean, I can understand somebody killing themselves. I can understand, but somebody who decides I'm going to bring people to hell myself, it's different. It's like Dostoevsky was a soldier, but there's nothing soldierly about, as far as I understand, about all of his great writings. It's more about misery of people living in urban life more than it's because one of his other books, it's the demons, and the demons, it's like everything. It's like a huge gathering of people that are waiting for someone to come, and once the person comes, it's a monster.
Well, but let's go back to Tanakorn's observation and Moses, and it is a great book. And reading great books, there must be a reason, though people can be wrong. Everyone can be wrong. That notion, though, that this is a very difficult part of you. So why engage with it in literature?
Because we don't want to engage with him in real life. So we go by proxy, like we fight our demons before our demons fight us.
I think that's a great answer, right? So I think that's what all three of you would say, right? Eduardo, we don't, you can speak if you like, but right? I think that's really spot on, right? So we don't want to test this. And so we are given a chance to test out some of the elements which are human, all too human in us, right? And we can do it and engage with someone like Dostoevsky, who somehow brings us to it in a way that's remarkably believable, right? The verisimilitude or the mimesis of life seems remarkable. Now, I've taught this book to 18-year-olds in New York City, at least the first time I did that, and I think I urged them to not eat anything, only drink Coca-Cola and see no light of day for 48 hours and try to read the book. And if they could do that in some way, they might feel a little bit like Raskolnikov, right? I don't know if any of you ever lived in that small, a cramped space in some way for a while?
Well,
That's true, actually. They go outside, and the description is it's just as bad outside as it is inside, right? At least between, I don't know, his flat and the Haymarket. I've been to well, it was Leningrad when I was there. And that was fun. It's nice to read about places you've sort of been, and all the bridges and canals. Russians are interesting people. Dostoevsky is certainly quite a writer. You'll note that there isn't much in the way of politics in the book, right? I mean, is this anti-czarist? Is it royalist? Is it radical? No. Well, okay, right. But Christianity isn't necessarily politics. Maybe everything's politics, but I mean more narrowly. Surely you can read something and it might reference presidents or czars or revolutionaries or circles of radicals. And right, there's nothing here like that. And anyway, just a beginning point, which is reading Russian literature is a wonderful thing, in my view. I find it, at least among the novelists of the world and poets, particularly the 19th century, no one exceeds the Russians. No national literature exceeds the Russian. I've already answered you. I'm allowed to push you. So how have I answered you? Very obliquely, but I think I have suggested the answer, in my view. Good. All right, so the simple answer would be the shittier the politics, the more likely the art might be good. But let me explain, at least in the context of Russian. You deserve it by the question. So in Russia, let's say you're you four remarkable young people, right? And you have a love and an energy and a commitment to life, and in fact to who you are, and you're Russian, right? You're a young Russian people, and you love Russia, but you might also feel like, well, how am I going to serve Russia with my super abundant energy and intelligence? Well, you could try to change the politics. Oh no, you can't do that. Right? You get involved in politics, and either you're kissing the czar's bedroom, or whatever. You're a knight of the chamber pot, and irrelevant, or you're a revolutionary trying to overthrow him. And so you have no real legitimate way of demonstrating your love for country and changing, because every institution needs change, every country, every culture needs development. You can't do it by going to Congress, right? You can't be elected mayor, much less president. So if the politics are hopeless, and remember, 19th century American politics are really interesting at this moment. And they give rise to Abraham Lincoln, who was uneducated and ultimately becomes president. I know about him. That if you can't, and you still are desperately committed to Mother Russia, Rodina Mats, as it's called, Mother Russia, what do? And one way you might do it is to write political tracts, but you can't get those published. So if you want to change the world, you have to do it in what the Russians call, using the Greek term, Aesopian language, right? Aesop, the fables. So you write fables that are not ostensibly about literature. About politics, but they're desperately about changing the country. So there's a tradition then from Pushkin, really, who was sort of publishing just when Dostoevsky was born. So about 3 generations then of writers from Pushkin through Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, and then actually into the 20th century, some. And then they're Soviet followers, because again, Soviet Union is a little bit like Tsardom. You can't really criticize Stalin. You're not allowed to raise a party that says defeat Stalin 1948 or something. That's not on. Or sorry, defeat Stalin 1929. Right. By the way, that's the year of the great collectivization of agriculture. So what do? and you embrace another form, a poetic form of love, of change. Anyway, that's my wrap on that. And so you have an amazing line. Anyway, to add one thing to it, in the story, from Pushkin's first great novel, it's in verse, it's in poetry, called Yevgeny Onegin, Eugene Onegin in English, whatever, which is also an opera. He introduces a character, Eugene, who is what the Russians call a lishny человек, and this is getting toward lecture. Sorry, guys, I'll speed up. A lishny in Russian means superfluous, unconnected. He's an aristocrat. He owns a country home, wherever he lives on his, and he doesn't do anything for the serfs. He doesn't do anything. He's supposed to be an intellectual, but he, in a great revelatory scene in that book, is the woman who's in love with him goes into his library looking for him, and none of the books have been cut open. You know how they're octavo, and the pages are you have to cut the pages to read a book, and she goes up to all the books, and it's like, if you've seen The Shining, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's exactly that. At least I think. I'm crazy, but run this by Michael. Tatiana goes in there and she's opening the things, and she hasn't read any books. So she thought at least he was a scholar. He's superfluous motherfucker. He's nothing. And so there's a whole tradition then of these protagonists like Raskolnikov, who are, Raskolnikov is the extreme case, right? Why isn't this guy a student? Or why isn't he student is nothing, we know that, but why isn't he something? He's nothing. And so he's sort of the capstone of this whole tradition of failure to launch young men, right? And he's one of them, isn't he? And of course, that's one of the questions we want to ask ourselves, is how does he end up in the coffin on Vasilevsky Street or wherever the house is, right? How does he end up in that coffin, right? He's already in a coffin when we meet him.
Yeah, because the thing that I noted, because I read the epilogue a little more clearly, it's that, well, okay, so he's in the coffin because he's already, by the time we meet it, he already has a burnout because he has helped all of those other people, and now he's broke. But if you don't read the epilogue, it's just like, no reason. So it's like, because that's the one question, is that, like, there's a work of art, like a movie that I haven't seen. Apparently in China, what they've done, it's that they've written, like, at the end of the movie, you read a text that's basically says, and then he got in prison for his crime, then after that he married a beautiful lady and he had children, and he's a good citizen now. So sometimes it's like, epilogues, are they really part of the main story, or are they just added on because otherwise, like, you can't publish this work unless you,
right, with a child-proof cap, maybe. Clockwork Orange, if you've read that book by Anthony Burgess, it has a chapter 21 that the movie, if you've seen the movie by Stanley Kubrick, doesn't have. So again, kind of an epilogue that hugely changes the way we want to understand it. Hello, Brad. Good to see you. All right, so let's start with this question. Here we are, you guys, young men. Raskolnikov is you, thank God, only in some ways, right? So you get a chance to read him, right? You get a chance to read about this guy, and he's what? How, when we meet him, what do we find out about him?
So he's definitely of two minds from the very beginning. He's always, saying one thing and then immediately countering with the opposite. So it's like he's two people in there. And I saw a little lecture on this. I guess Raskolnikov means schism, and so I guess that was intentional on the point of Dostoevsky. But yeah, he was definitely split, and a good example of that is early on in the book when the woman is walking in front of him drunk, and then you have the fellow across the street that he thinks he wants to take advantage of her. So his initial instinct is to defend the woman and protect her. But once the the police is walking away, you know, once she's left, he immediately flips and he's like, well, why do I care? You know, what if he does get her and have his way with her, and you know, all the horrible things. Like, what does that have to do with me? Like why do I care? And he's constantly flipping back and forth like that, from someone who cares to someone who, once his intelligence and his education, I think, clicks in, he thinks that caring is not something that's valuable. He needs to be more rational. And so you see him flip back and forth between someone who cares and someone who's
right. If this works for
facts.
the rest of you guys, are there other examples, or is another example like that would validate Moses's claim here? Which seems
yeah, no, I'm trying to think back through for another example, but I agree. He seems to be of divided mind, and it seems to, I mean, I didn't know how we were going to get out of section 1 of the book without the guy just completely falling apart. Like the portrait of a man divided against himself and just mumbling in the street, like something you'd see, you know, walking down the streets of New York City. It was so vivid. I'm like, well, how's this going to be the protagonist to never hold himself together? So I guess for me, the novel was him slowly becoming a little less of a divided mind, again, until the ending. Things, you know, then there's all the conversion stuff at the end, especially in the epilogue. But no, at the beginning, he's extremely a divided mind. I mean, maybe it reminds me, well, I don't want to get outside the text. I was a sophomore away at college once too, and I tried on some new ideas, and some of them were bad ideas, and some of them were poisonous ideas. So I was probably a little divided against myself once too when I was 20.
All right. Are we surprised? Hello, Dylan, and I'm not sure Scott. Not seen him before, but why not? Week 15. He's just beginning, right? He's going to work backwards. Isn't there that moment where just after he's committed a crime ostensibly for money, and he gives away the entire 25 rubles that he has to Mrs. Marmeladov? Right? Doesn't that work, Moses, in a kind of similar way of you know, having and then giving it all away, which is a good thing. It's a good act. Most murderers wouldn't straight away do that. Right? So that does seem to be a divided mind then, yeah.
So I have a question. So this jumped out to me. That was the second time he gave money to the Marmeladovs. The first time it was some copence, and his divided mind, he gives it to him and he walks down the stairs and immediately he regrets it. He's like, oh, I want to go get it back. But, you know, he doesn't. Did he regret giving the 25 rubles? I don't remember him regretting it. Does anybody recall? Because maybe that showed some sort of change after the murder. Maybe in a sense, you know, the healing had begun.
Excellent. No, I don't recall. I don't think he does. Right? Because he's already, when he gives the 25 rubles, what's happened at that scene? Who's he met?
Sonia.
Right. So redemption's already there. So, hello, Jake.
Just one thought on that. I thought by the time we got to the end and there was a real spiritual conversion at the end, I thought, well, maybe the 25 rubles at the beginning was sort of a false conversion. Sometimes people think they can achieve righteousness through outer life works or giving alms to the poor or something, but it doesn't work. He doesn't really become redeemed by that. It's not till the very end a real conversion.
All right. Well, look, we'll play with this, but I think we want to be very, very smart as we chat now for a little while about what he's thinking. So let's do our best to remember we have actions, and then we can work on explaining them. And the last, Fyodor gives us a lot of psychological explanation, right? That's really what he's about, right? He's a brilliant it's an interior novel, as we would say. But I think we still want to be careful. We don't know what the gift does. We don't know that it's hasn't worked on him yet. We don't really know. And time is compressed here, right? After the murder, things spin out of control for us as well as readers, right? And that's the idea. Right. Well, I guess we should read some of the text, but I'm going to go a little bit different route, if that's okay now. I'm going to not ask Brad a question, and by not asking him, it's toward him, but it's for all of us, and maybe not Brad to answer. Raskolnikov's committed a murder. We kind of know why. We kind of figure out why. There may be lots of whys, but we kind of know why. And he has a theory for us about it, doesn't he? Right? He's got a theory, which is kind of a mistake to publish a theory. Well, he didn't mean to publish it, but anyway, he published a theory about what he's going to do. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that. You're likely to get caught, right? Whatever it is. Who's Peter Falk, that character that he played in
Columbo?
Columbo, right? Columbo's going to find out. Porphyry's going to figure it out. So don't do that. But I really only have one question for you guys for the entire 45 minutes now or whatever. Really, only a single question. And I know that Brad would have an answer, and I'm going to ask him not to answer it this way. Okay, so here's the question. What are you going to tell Raskolnikov to convince him not to do? Why is it wrong? Why is it wrong to murder Elizaveta and the old hag, as she's called? All right, why is it wrong? And surely one answer is, well, if you're religious, right? God gives us rules. First of all, the Decalogue. I think one of them, isn't it? Doesn't on those tablets, even if Moses broke them, I think we remember, right? Thou shalt not murder. Is that is right? So that's an answer, right? So if the Bible's yours, there's an answer, straight up. Or another one, of course, is if you do believe in God, these are God's rules. These aren't yours, right? So with God, you know what you want, you can tell Raskolnikov. Isn't that right? Right? It's not easy, but it's a fact. You can do that. But what about for the folks who don't have God? If you don't have God, don't tell me I insist you do. Let's start with the presumption. You don't have God. And some people don't. Right? Michael plays a game with you, I think, in a wonderful way of he does and he doesn't, right? He was being silly last week till I couldn't take it. I couldn't take sitting next to him last week. I won't lie to you, because I felt responsible, but I wasn't. Look, I'm moderate, and he hasn't had a drink or anything probably in a long time because he's very sick. And so I'm visiting. He's going to treat me well, and we're going to drink, and he's not going to handle it. So, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys think I didn't handle it last week, and he was sober. So you may have concluded that, but I beg to differ. I was there, and I beg to differ. But I love the man too much to ever be embarrassed for him. Too bad, and it's good for you. If you put him on any kind of pedestal, you should see who he is. He's a great man, but he was a little relaxed. Anyway, this is it. We got to ask. Without God, what are you going to say to Raskolnikov? Or unless you just say, fine, yeah, if you can get away with it and you're not feeling bad, go to it. Kill her. Redistribute the money or whatever, the guy's drinking in the bar the night before, Raz and his friend are thinking about, right, that Raskolnikov overhears. So that's the question I have for you guys. Who wants to dive into that? What are you going to tell him?
All right, I have an idea. So I kind of believe that maybe with Raskolnikov trying to reason with him perhaps would not have been very optimal, since he's a law student, right? And we know that he's an intelligent fellow. So if you approach him after the murder, of course that's not going to work because he's already broken down. It's crazy. The detective could pressure him, but that's another thing. Or if we approach him before the murder, then trying to reason with him, probably you will lose in an argument, or he'll just circle it back at the beginning somehow, sophistically, and just shut it down because he will not be listening. So the part that I wanted to read today is a little silly sort of part of chapter 5 of book 1, where before he goes there, before he commits the deed, he has this momentary sort of hesitation where he is like, should I go to Razumihin and talk to him? And I think the only thing that we could do for him, if you were trying to fix him, you would want Razumihin to get to him before that happened. Because if he doesn't have God again, he's shut in. He's in that one-on-one square meter apartment. He's going insane just being there. He's not being fed well. He doesn't have a job or nothing. And I think he just needed to connect to people more. So just talk to Razumihin. Just maybe actually take one of the, I don't know, a dozen invitations to different social gatherings that Razumihin extended to him, and just talk to some people. You know, just like there was that other student in the beginning that talked about killing the, you know, the old hag, right? But he just talked at the table and he got the thoughts out. The guy sort of taunted or challenged him or whatever. And Raskolnikov could have been just that student right there at that seat.
Yeah, what do they do? What do they do? What's the next word that Dostoevsky gives us? I love that. He says, then they got up and played billiards.
Yeah.
So in other words, they went from one game to another. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Camber, read to us your bit. This is good.
All right. Because I was reading it in Russian. All right.
Nope, по-английски, пожалуйста.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Oh yeah. So of course I've been meaning lately to go to Razumihin's to ask for work, to ask him to get me lessons or something. Raskolnikov thought. But what help can he be to me now? Suppose he gets me lessons. Suppose he shares his last farthings with me, if he has any farthings, so that I could get some boots and maybe make myself tidy enough to give lessons. Well, and what then? What shall I do with the few coppers I earn? It's not what I want now. It's really absurd for me to go to Razumihin. The question why he was going to Razumihin agitated him even more than he was himself aware. He kept uneasily seeking for some sinister significance in his apparently ordinary action. Could I have expected it to set it all right, to set it all straight and find a way out by means of Razumihin alone? He asked himself in perplexity. He pondered and rubbed his forehead, and strange to say, after long musing, suddenly, as if it were spontaneously and by chance a fantastic thought, it came into his head. To Razumihin's, he said all at once, calmly, as though he had reached a final determination. I shall go to Razumihin's, of course, but not now. I shall go to him on the next day after it, when it will be over and everything will begin afresh. So yeah, he just, he feels the strong drive to go there. Perhaps subconsciously he understands that he needs a human connection, but he refuses it to himself, and just, that's the moment where it could have gone right, I think.
Excellent. Really.
That reminds me, Peter, I asked you, like, how do you pull someone off of the existential cliff? And then your answer was friendship. So it looks like that's what Raskolnikov was looking for there without fully realizing
it. Don't quote me, please. It's such an embarrassment. Dylan, Jake, what you guys got? What do you say to him?
If he thinks he's a superior person, one of the only ways to reason with him was to maybe try to bring him down to his level and find some way to compare him to the Superman he sees himself as.
Yeah, that'll bring him down a notch, won't
it? Yeah,
right, Camber. Maybe you can actually out-reason him, right? You assumed you can't. Actually, I'm kind of on your side, but Jake is making an interesting point. So you think you're, what do we say, Napoleon or Galileo, right? Really?
Isn't there a part where Porphyry talks about a theory that's growing in popularity, that you can cure a man of insanity using logic? Maybe it's kind of, that's what Jake's talking about.
Well, don't you folks want to use logic here? How are you going to explain not to kill the two women? Or are you for it, Dylan? Dylan's thinking, I know, I'm for the theory of the extraordinary man here. Absolutely. Hey, totally justifiable. Do it.
Well, no, the way I would, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The way I would approach it probably is just kind of asking him why, I guess. Like, I don't think he has justifications, you know, all abound. He thinks all these great things, kind of how what you were talking about, Jake. It's, why do you know this? How do you know this? How do you know you're correct? It's sure, you can reason yourself into it, but that doesn't mean that the assumptions that you're going on are correct. And so, it's if you're working on faulty assumptions when it comes to something as serious as, murder and taking another person's life, I don't know, sure, you can justify it however you want, but that doesn't mean that, you're right, or you actually have any standing to, do what you want to do. So essentially, I would agree with Jake. I think, you probably could try at least to take him down to, the level he's really at, and, question the assumption that, oh yeah, sure, you are so great, but how do you know that? What makes you above everyone else?
Interesting. So is Mike scheduled to meet with you guys at the bottom of the hour?
No, he's sick, so I don't think he is.
Oh, really? Well, that's too bad. I would have done it. So what I would have asked you to ask him is, maybe it's not possible. How many of you believe it's not possible, actually, that what we're trying to say and work our way around is not possible? That if you don't actually have faith in God, that you can't talk him out of it. You can't anyway him out of it. That actually without belief in something larger, or a larger ethical code, or some judgment that's beyond you, then there's no reason to think that there's any value in human life. That in order to find value in human life, you have to have faith. All right, well, anyway, if you ask Michael that, I don't know what he would answer. I genuinely don't. What about whom? Sorry. Sorry.
Oh, he asked you to, could you repeat what you said?
Lev Trotsky?
Love.
Oh, what about love? Okay, phew. That's better. That's better than Lev Bronstein. His name was Trotsky. Right. What about love? What about love? So is this a little like what Camber was saying? The friendship is a kind of love, right? That, right? If he reached out there, that's a kind of move you're saying too.
And I'll just add, so I agree with that. I think I'm just kind of extending that, and that is, so first get him out of his apartment and maybe out of St. Petersburg, and maybe into nature, and there, he can, with the change of environment. So okay, so this is interesting. I learned.
Well, let's be
I used
sure.
to
If he's alone on Mount Everest, he's not killing anyone in St. Petersburg. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, but love. So but how do you get to love, right? So he had love from his mother and his sister. He had caring from his friend. He had caring from Natasha. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce. So he had people around him who were there to offer kindness and love, but he wasn't able to accept it. And I think so. The first step to opening him up might be to get him out of that.
But in any event, what other reflections have people? Hey, hi, Tonicorn. We were waiting for you. No. Oh. Wait, what? Okay, so would you mind? This occurred maybe a month or 6 weeks back. Did Dr. Sugrue send to all of you saying he cannot come this week for the after we are done our talk? Is that right? Tonicorn, am I understanding you correctly? Oh,
Okay.
no. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. You know, I don't know if people were able to hang around for the conversation last week, but a dear friend of I've known Dr. Sugrue for more than 40 years, and as I've said multiple times, but Peter Field, who was on the call with Dr. Sugrue last week, Peter Field lives in New Zealand and flew in to see Michael. And I don't really know all the circumstances of that. I have not been in touch with either of them, but it seemed to me that Dr. Sugrue was suffering, and I don't know. The conversation came off the wheels, I sort of thought, in ways it had not previously done. But thank you for saying that. I did not know. I'm really sad that he won't be able to join us. But see, yeah, she sends that to you guys, but I'm checking my email now, and I don't.
It's not in the email. It's in the general chat. It's in the general group.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, one moment. I will get there. Let's see. I must not know how to use. I do a lot of meetings. Do a lot of meetings in Teams, but I see. Oh, in general chat, maybe I'm in the wrong.
General chat.
Aha.
Yeah, because the issue with Teams is that sometimes when a status change, it's not clear. It's like sometimes it doesn't send any sound when the text is sent, and
Okay. Oh, I see that now. Yes, thank you very much, Tonicorn. Thank you. Oh, yes, yes, an hour ago. You're exactly right. I'm so okay. I have distracted us. Oh, that's a bummer. Oh, I was really looking forward to it as kind of a culminating experience, but he did seem pretty sick last week to me.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. But hi, Tonicorn. I thought you missed Connor began, and I followed with saying how very much we, and I'm sure it's true for yes, please.
Yeah. Nowhere near qualified to go there. It's a tough question. There's a lot of issues.
No, yes, thank you. No, we could come back to that. No, I was just, Tonicorn just saying that we had been celebrating our group and how absolutely terrific everyone's comments have been each week, and just thanking you and everyone for this wonderful time to get together. But yes, and you know, if I may press Connor a little bit in regard to Tanakorn's good question, Connor, I am so incredibly impressed by each of your. I'm always fearful of saying of complimenting one person and having others not also feel complimented. But Connor, and certainly everyone here, I deepest appreciation for your knowledge, intellect, insight, kindness, and everything. But Connor, you have been enormously insightful with regard to human psychology. And with regard to Nietzsche, for example, bipolar, which I've been thinking about this week, and it in a way I had not previously thought of, but it really seems to make some sense. And if I may, in a friendly way, press Tanakorn's question, if you were, and even if it was just off the cuff, how might you describe Raskolnikov's psychic world? Or you did say, and I don't, if I'm being overbearing, my apologies, I'm absolutely not meaning to be, but I just appreciate your insights.
Go ahead, Connor.
I suppose briefly, when I guess recurring theme across Dostoevsky's novels and the problems that his protagonists often run into is that they're socially isolated. And I guess it's a big problem, for modern society as well. Dostoevsky, Raskolnikov it appears he goes weeks or even months without having proper social interactions, and that can have a very scary effects on people. Not unlike the ones that we see within Raskolnikov, but also, I guess the mixture of social isolation and thinking too much as well. It can create these very complex networks of thought, and they can become kind of self-reinforcing. And you see that a lot of people who have paranoid disorders, things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, where they get these ideas in their head and then they tune away from contradictory evidence. And so, for instance, if you have a paranoid disorder and you think people are staring at you, you often don't pay enough attention to them looking at you to realize that they're not staring at you. And so you kind of see someone glance in your direction, and all of a sudden you're in your head saying, everyone's watching me. And so that seems to be kind of a thing early on in the novel when he's formulating his plans around committing the murder. It seems to be kind of a self-reinforcing pattern of thought. And then so the last thing to kind of think about it from kind of a psychoanalysis point of view, which I'm not fully trained in, but there seems to be plenty of kind of Carl Jung to his thought as well, where he seems to be, and Freud as well, I suppose, where when he's thinking about the murder, he does, as far as I can tell, he doesn't actually call it a murder or call it a killing until after the act is done. So whenever he thinks about the murder, he doesn't think of it as being a murder, but he thinks of it as being that, or as being some kind of unspeakable act in his head. And that, I think, ties quite nicely to Freud in particular, who, he would have, it would have been kind of an unconscious thought, or kind of a thought that was repressed, but yet one that he was still prone to act on. And so I suppose those would be a few kind of lines of inquiry if you were to have Raskolnikov as a client.
Yeah, thank you. Tanakorn, is that useful to you? Thank you. Yeah, and Samuel began, I think, Samuel, I think, is back. I think he may have stepped away for a second, but I see he's back now. And Samuel began, when we began speaking this afternoon, Samuel was making a similar point to Connor's point about social isolation and its self-reinforcing mechanism, in the sense that in the opening scene, or in an early scene in the novel, when Raskolnikov is drinking with the character whose daughter is a prostitute, and who that same character is later killed in an accident in the novel, that self-reinforcing sadness and mental distress, and in some measures, Connor, thank you very much, a series of ideas overthinking and overthinking and paranoid disorder. Samuel was opened with a comment saying that as people who think they think too much, they drink, they feel sad, and then they drink because they feel sad, and it becomes a self-reinforcing mechanism. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes, Trevor.
I guess one little tidbit, just a section of the gay science from last week that I feel like sums up Raskolnikov's outlook pretty well. Number 325, what belongs to greatness. Who will attain anything great if he does not find in himself the strength and the will to inflict great suffering? Being able to suffer is the least thing. Weak women and even slaves often achieve virtuosity in that, but not to perish of internal distress and uncertainty when one inflicts great suffering and hears the cry of this suffering. That is great. That belongs to greatness. So yeah, basically I feel like that sort of in its shadow exemplifies Raskolnikov's problem with just that little phrase, internal distress and uncertainty.
Yes.
That was just where my mind went first. I'm certainly not as psychologically adroit, but I feel like there's a thread connecting those.
It's really amazing to me that Dostoevsky was supposedly unaware of Nietzsche's writing when he wrote Crime and Punishment, because like he anticipates it so brilliantly, and obviously Nietzsche and Dostoevsky were tuned into the same kind of cultural movements, although with kind of very different conclusions. But it's amazing to, when I first read Crime and Punishment, I was convinced that he was responding directly to Nietzsche, and obviously he wasn't at all.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So I'm rereading the passage that Trevor just eloquently read for us in my edition, which I purchased in 1977. In any
Yeah, mine's the Kaufman. Yours might be different. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is the Kaufman. Yes, no, it is the same. I have it's on page 255. We may even have the same pagination, but okay.
Oh yes.
Yes, very good. So as I said, I with Nietzsche, and just to step away from Dostoevsky for a moment, and to concur with Connor's comment also, and Trevor, your comment too, that Nietzsche and Dostoevsky similarly, but in my youthful handwriting here, right next to I do have a bunch of underlinings and asterisks on the page, on page 254 and 255, and underlinings regarding various different points. But next to 325, I wrote, Nietzsche is sick. I mean, I must say, because what belongs to greatness? I mean, I just can't tolerate it. What belongs to greatness? The ability, but not to perish of internal distress and uncertainty when one inflicts great suffering. This is, you will know, Dr. Sugrue spoke last week when he was talking about Nietzsche, that, some commentators, scholars note that in the First World War, some of the officers in the German army carried with them Nietzsche as reading, and this idea, I don't know. This is really sick. I'm not. It is an excellent thing to point to because there is very much a resonance or a sympathetic quality between this 325 aphorism 325 in Nietzsche and Crime and Punishment, but not to perish of internal distress and uncertainty when one inflicts great suffering and hears the cry of this suffering. That is greatness. That belongs to greatness. Hang on, let's see, footnote number 52. The distress that this section caused, yes, here we go. This is now Kaufman in the footnote on the same page. The distress that this section caused some of Nietzsche's first readers illustrates his point. He knew how his development and books had pained his mother, his sister, and others, and so many others. So anyway, I don't know. Ugh. This is why I truly didn't have time to reread Crime and Punishment, but this is why I might not have, because it is such a brilliant artistic rendering of this sort of, I don't know if one wants to call it mental illness or human distress or a particular psyche of Raskolnikov and so forth. But anyway, no, Trevor, thank you very much. Sorry, I find that devastating and Hitlerian, right? I mean, sort of Hitler.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like that's definitely one of the more unambiguous sort of, I guess, Nazi type ideologic soapboxings. But what? Oh my God, what else was I going to say? Oh, I guess I was just going to say that I may be seeming to paint Nietzsche in a terrible light there, but I actually really did enjoy the gay science a lot more, and I've grown more fond of him in the past years. I like a lot of people did sort of have a moment with him in high school, and now returning to him later, it's a little richer for me.
Oh yeah, no. As I think I said, I took a semester off from college to read Nietzsche. I had been raised Roman Catholic, and Nietzsche just tore everything apart in my brain, and I was very disoriented. I mean, I worked a minimum wage job. I wasn't as though I was wealthy enough to just sit around and read Nietzsche, but I really needed to recalibrate and figure out what he was talking about in any event. But yes, no, sorry. My goodness. Other thoughts on Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment? Peter Field, who was with Michael last time, had called a few times. People may have heard in the general discussions for a summing or a what was the theme, what thread had gone through all of these lectures and our discussions. I don't know if we were to keep to our traditional time. We have about 15 minutes. And any summative comments, or either on Dostoevsky or anything people would like to say. Yes, please. Yes, the weaving together of love and rationality. Yes, he does talk about that. And in the course of this lecture, in the course of this series, I was surprised to hear him say during the general conversation and commentary that he is not Christian. I've known him for many years. I'm obviously not as in touch with him since he's been sick now for about 12 years. And obviously getting very ill right now, but in any event, I had understood him from anyway years of conversation in a different way. But Tonicorn, yes, the relationship of love and rationality, I do think that's beautifully said.
If I could suggest, I think there was kind of two streams, I think, between the different books that were on the course. One seemed to be kind of the evolution of political ideas in the West, and then the other one, I think, close to what Tonicorn was suggesting, would have been, I guess, the conflict between something like love or fate or passion with reason. So I think that we saw kind of, we went from Plato and Aristotle and their kind of thoughts around statesmanship to Othello, Machiavelli, Castiliana, Renaissance politics up to the kind of the social contract theorists, and then we kind of broke down into hard times, the gay science and crime and punishment, which were quite much more to do with this conflict between rationality, or I suppose how rationality can go wrong. And so I suppose that may lead us nicely to the political problems of today, perhaps.
Yes. Absolutely. Very nice. Connor, thank you very much. I'm writing. Samuel or Trevor? Summative thoughts, notions of what the whole series has been about, or that you have taken away?
I guess last time I mentioned a sort of a tension between protean opposites, but I guess that now that I've been thinking about it, that kind of implies a dualism in itself, and dualism has been kind of one of the antipodes of the discourse as well. And I think he did mention a little bit last time about how discourse was a certain sort of theme, which might sound a little clinical. I remember discourse being one of the first words thrown around when I first started studying theory late in high school. But I don't know. I've just always appreciated Dr. Segrue's multifaceted approach to things. He's talking about reading Leo Strauss and then John Rawls, for instance. It's just a pretty weird situation that someone is as adroit in both while still trying to maintain at least, I guess, I think it was Aristotle, like entertaining a thought without accepting it. Maybe that was Socrates. It's probably, that's one of those ones that's attributed so much,
Yes, no. Yes, the breadth of Dr. Segrue's learning has always astonished me. Absolutely. And the Leo Strauss, John Rawls example is really well said. Michael Sugrue studied with people at University of Chicago who had studied in turn with Leo Strauss and so forth. So yes, no, very, very nice. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh, yeah. Samuel, summative thoughts or concluding thoughts, or even just any old thought about
yeah,
Strauss?
well, it kind of feels like this course, for me, it feels like the Matrix, the second movie where we have three captains from different ships that are united by reasons that they do not understand, and they call it fate. And it's really tough to find interesting people such as you that enjoy having a deep dive into, well, we can call it great literature, but it's more than that. It's like on some level, it's like thinking the nature of being through the use of those great books. And I mean, it's like, I remember when I was 20, it's 19 and 20, I went, because in Quebec we have high school, then we have college for 2 years, and then we have university. And I couldn't talk to, I wasn't like where Tenecarn is right now. I couldn't talk to people my age because, especially when I left college, when I went into engineering, it's like we're all so streamlined into studying maths and physics, not because we want to, but because we have to in order to get the degree, that I would go back to college and try to see my friends. Like, turns out that the people that that one of the happiest places in my life was the geeks of the Dungeons and Dragons club. It's like that, playing games, thinking. It's like, and like I said last week, some of them did smoke marijuana, but it's like I could go there to think and talk to my old teachers, because people my age in my peer group were so damn boring and like streamlined into, well, we need to study maths because not because we enjoy it, because we have to get our degree, and once we have the degree, like the goal is like we need the car, the apartment, the girlfriend, and like, I mean, so boring. And now we had this class where, like you said, John, it's that we didn't pick those books. Mike picked them for us, and he's a great book picker. But it's that I can read those books alone, but finding people that will take the deep dive into reading it and then like trying to understand why it was written that way, how those things can affect us in real life, it's so near impossible that I feel that on some level it's like in that movie, it's like we're brought together by God. On some level, it's or in the Matrix, it's like we're brought down together by the architect who doesn't even live in the real world, but he knew that we would meet and that we would renew the Matrix so that humans and machines can live in peace again each so many years. So thank you.
No, thank you. Oh my gosh. And perhaps I'm happy to have other persons say in some measures concluding ideas. But is there any interest in sharing email addresses, or I'm a little sad not to ever see any of you guys again. If you,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, you can say it. Yeah, but also we can just write our email addresses to the chat. We have all
I'll
each
do that
other's
as
email
well, at
addresses.
least, yeah.
We already have each of our email addresses from the video links, but it's harder
Oh.
to pronounce. So it's might be simpler if we
I'll
just
go
write
ahead
our
and pop it right in
email
there.
in this chat. Yeah.
Sorry, John, I was wondering as well, just what Samuel was saying there about reading lists, whether you yourself had any recommended books or anything that you think that we should all be spending some time with.
No, I don't, not immediately, oddly enough. And everyone here seems so incredibly well read. I'm just, I'm particularly hesitant. I mean, I check out more books from the library and at least read elements in them than the rest of the faculty, I think, combined. But I do try to read a lot, but I don't, nothing immediately comes to mind. But thank you for asking. Oh my gosh. And let me see, I'm in the chat. Wait.
Oh, thank you.
Ah, there we go. Aha. And I add, oh, there we go. Cool. Give me a second. I am the least savvy person with technology, but okay. I am going to do take a picture of my screen. And now I have people's email addresses. That's fantastic.
Oh, you know what? I'll do that as well. Yeah, good idea.
Thank you very much indeed. It has been an enormous pleasure. I really cannot thank you guys enough. And I guess we're not meeting in the general section. So
yeah, if that's possible, that'd be amazing. But yeah.
Is there a is there a meeting? We are not meeting again, though. Is that correct?
Not unless Genevieve has something in mind, I guess.
Oh, okay, very good. I see. It would be nice to be able to get together with him one more time. Maybe I will email her and suggest that. That's a great idea. I do know that he is very sick, but yeah. But thank you. Well, I think I myself will ring off here, but unless if I'm the convener, if I ring off, everyone is forced to leave. I can leave my computer on. Oh.
I think they might be doing a meeting in the general chat anyway.
Oh, they are.
You
Okay,
can
yes,
take it
I
always
think
remember that.
you're right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would.
let's go. Yeah, I see it.
I would love to.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr.
Cheers.
Keating.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keating. It's been a
Cheers.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you very much indeed.
Right? And whatever that plus is, right? That's really what you want to explore. And, you know, from my perspective, I'll just give you guys a little bit of a exhortative little oration at the end, but only 20 seconds, is that it turns out there's multiple vocabularies. So you can go to Kant, and Kant will tell you never treat other people as objects, right? And so obviously, bashing someone with an ice pick over the head is definitely object, right? Right? Yeah, they're not the subject; they're the object of the other end of the hatchet. Not to make light of this, but Porphyry does, right? He's always joking around. Wouldn't it be fun to smack someone over the head with a hatchet? Why are you so pale, Raskolnikov? What bothers you about thinking about bashing into someone's skull with a hatchet? You know, or an ice pick if you're Trotsky. My little exhortative bit is whatever vocabulary you want. There are many, but I think Michael's line is that really will never do for you guys. You don't have to come up with your own vocabulary. You don't have to. But I think he really thinks it's invaluable for you to take yourselves seriously enough to play with Aristotle's or Plato's or Kant's or Kierkegaard's or Aurelius's or Nietzsche's and Dostoevsky's and Othello's or Shakespeare's vocabulary. And I hope that's what we've done. That is, we've stayed near the text. We've read from the text each week, almost, right? Each of you have read. And by being near text and looking at the text together, you get to really dress yourself up in other vocabularies. And these are great superhuman human vocabularies of Shakespeare and Descartes and Dickens and Dostoevsky. And that's what we can do. And I believe actually there's no one more gifted at that actually than Mike Sugrue, who can jump from vocabulary to vocabulary in such a masterful way that you end up deciding that mosaic that he has is actually original enough, that it's actually Nietzsche. It's equivalent. It's something that's genuinely Sugruvian, even if it's never been articulated exactly. Not to me, not to John, not to Micah, not to Darren, but it always has, actually. Funny enough, it always has. And I can't tell you what it is because it has never been told to me. It's just been acted out. But my sense of it, and the only reason I've done this for 14 weeks with you guys, is to try to say, that's what you want to shoot for. Have a lot of fun with these extraordinarily difficult vocabularies and works. And as you do, you don't even have to come up with an original one. You already will be original by how you engage with these remarkable, amazing folks in the Western tradition, about which, Michael's forgotten more than I'll ever know. All right, folks, I'll see you on down the road. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Can I just catch you guys just very quickly? I just joined or like found out this lecture series like just right at the very end, and I just started kind of like following Michael Sugrue's work, and this is fascinating. I was just wondering, obviously, like, you know, I'm not too sure any of the works are like recorded or anything, or like I don't even know how it works. Like, you know, was there like a lectures before the question and answer? So I'm not so sure where I could start tracking backwards to where you guys came, so to speak, or if that is even a possibility.
Well, I think so. Mike Segru's daughter Genevieve, I don't think she's here today, but she manages his YouTube channel, and we did have lectures that are pre-recorded each week. I think it's kind of up to her. Like, I think most of us probably have some video files, but I think it's up to Genevieve whether and her dad whether they're going to post those to YouTube, like what they're going to do with those. I'm not sure we all should feel at liberty to share them. But I would hope that they get posted. You know, they've been posting pretty liberally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. It was
in contradistinction to this idea of human perfectibility, we are all sinful, right? The good ones acknowledge it, try to do something about it. They're never going to be perfect. The moral arc of the universe does not tend towards universal perfection. That's a demonic idea. It you know, we will never achieve moral perfection. What we need to do is acknowledge our failings and try to do better. But the idea that with the right social circumstances, no one will ever cheat on an exam again. Oh my God, that's scary. Scary that people think things like that. Yeah, I mean, again, I may be projecting, but you know, I get this as a college professor where it's like, well, you know, if there wasn't so much pressure on the students, they wouldn't cheat. And I'm like, you know, you've all turned 90. You don't remember being 19. You cheat because you can, right? That's why kids do it. They stop when they realize it's wrong. So, I mean, you know, we're all going to like kill the old lady when we can get away with it. Cheating isn't as bad as killing the old lady, but he needs to confess, not for her sake. It doesn't make the world a better place. Who is a better person for confessing? He is. Right? In the same way, I tell students, like, when you cheat, you're only cheating yourself because you know you cheated. And, you know, you're going to walk around, and the worst thing that could happen to you is you could have a good conscience and become Peter Illusion. It's the worst thing that could happen to you. The best thing, if you're a good person, is you will be racked with guilt, like Raskolnikov. Like, what kind of a jerk am I to cheat on that exam? That's what happens. Well, one, don't beat yourself up too bad. Be honest with yourself. Because for Dostoevsky, what you've discovered is you're human. That's just what people do. That's why they pray. Right? You're never going to stop doing it entirely. Yes, Stephen.
I don't disagree with you, but just for the sake of it,
Yeah.
is just being human enough though? Because I read this and I think about it just in terms of, for instance, was it they said in Theatre of War, if you want to sort of have a discussion about a subject that divides people, you focus on people's suffering. You're not necessarily coming to answers, but you can come to some sort of commonality of pain, commonality of language and stuff like that. But I think when you have sort of ironically categorical takeaways, so for instance, you mentioned cheating on an exam. Well, the difference between someone who went to college, say in the 60s, versus someone who goes now, who certainly if they're in America, who has to spend a lot of money doing that, I can sort of understand why they'd be like, because you think, oh my God, my life's going to be sufficiently worse if I don't pass this test. Whereas if you're at the university in pre-1997 in the UK, you're like, oh fuck it, I've got government grants, I've got this, I can get out of this, I'm fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, I mean, I see your point. I'm not so sure it was that stark of a difference. College was still expensive then too, but you know, maybe the job situation was better. But I do think let me put it this way: one idea here is, well, being a better person, won't necessarily save the world. But I think Dostoevsky's point or counterpoint would be, there is no saving the world. The world is the world. You're yourself. Right? In other words, look, even if we all take care of the bum we see in the street, there's still going to be a lot of bums out there, and there's still going to be that suffering. But read the stories, the interfaces of people in this novel carefully. Marfa Petrovna, right, the unmentionable guy's name, his wife, she had much wealth, much comfort. Does she suffer? You're right. The other guy she married, she bails out. He has everything. He's a voluptuary. He kills himself. He suffers. It's not the social problems. It's not poverty that's causing the suffering. It's inside. Right? That drunken guy, it's not just his alcoholism. That's a part of it. He goes into the alcoholism to cover up his self-pity. That he didn't do better. Well, pal, no one does better. You've got a ridiculous expectation. Right? He is torn when his wife says, when I reached in his pocket, he had a little biscuit for one of the kids. So he's torn. What's dragging him down? He keeps putting all this pressure on myself. I have to be perfect. Well, Dostoevsky's answer is you're not, and you never will be. You're flawed. We're sinful beings. The more aware you are of it, the better you'll do at it, the more you acknowledge it. At least so he argues. I mean, obviously, one doesn't have to be a person of deep faith to have ethical principles and behave well. But I think it does require, whether you're religious or not, the willingness to examine yourself carefully. And that means seeing all of your flaws, and then maybe afterwards trying to understand, you know what? I can't kill myself over these. This is what humans are. Stephen, yeah, your hands up.
Just to build on your point, I think that's really great because it ties up with, there's a sort of trope in literature with many characters when they withdraw from some society in some way, they're not in a position to have a self-reckoning because they're not engaging with society and such. So that's what I personally found. And as someone who isn't religious but can appreciate different kind of ethical modes, I found that purity of that situation when you sort of remove yourself from an opportunity for solidarity and redemption. So I think that's definitely something. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Again, as always, this summer I've taken you guys too long. You've got another meeting to go to, but I do want to say how much I've enjoyed being with you over the summer. It's been a blast. I hope you've enjoyed the readings and our conversations together. I know I talk too much. I apologize, but great books bring that out in me. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your year.
Thank you very much for the
Dr.
lecture.
Sala,
Thank you, guys.
Before we all go, some of us have started a Discord server where we're going to be reading, just a place where we can continue discussing after we have broken off this course officially. And we are thinking about reading through a book or two. I would be remiss not to invite you along if you had the time or interest.
Shoot me an email.
Great.
Okay, guys.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure.
And if you have any books that you think we should have on our Discord.
Okay, I will do that. Absolutely.